Hi ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a stranger kind of video. We usually do gaming and weirdness on our channel, but essentially, whenever I basically encounter something on the internet where I Google something, try to find an answer to my specific question, and ultimately come up short, I'm like, oh, well, I do videos, so let me make the video that I kind of wanted. So essentially, this video is about kettlebells, competition kettlebells specifically. Now, on the topic of competition kettlebells, it's like the cheapest kind of exercise equipment, but it also is semi-niche, so it's kind of up there, especially after the pandemic and after everything closed, things got a lot more pricey. So, me being a cheapo, I basically looked online to find the kettlebells that had all the things that I wanted, and were made strong and good and all those things, but also didn't cost too much. But one of the downsides to that is I got kettlebells that actually have a couple problems. This is a 51. Also, if I look sweaty and gross, it's because I just played with my dog and I'm sweating because he's a fucking boxer who has a ton of energy, regardless. Anyways, they come with polished handles, which I heard everywhere when I was starting to learn about kettlebell stuff that that's bad. And people never really specify why it's bad. They just say it's no good. And after trying to manage this, it's real not good. It's really hard. It doesn't like slip through your hands. It has like both of the negative things that you don't want. Where since it's polished, it's like perfectly smooth. When your hand gets sweaty, it becomes incredibly hard to hold, like slip through your hands kind of hold. But because it's polished, also it means it grips onto your hand like a vice, and it doesn't let it go, and like you catch the skin in your flesh in the handle horribly. So no good. So regardless of what you want to do, you want to sand this down. But along my journey, I tried to find out basically how do you perfectly restore a handle from a kettlebell to a handle that was ideal to actually use. You know, like for me, I just want like a metallic handle. I don't want anything else, just metallic, like straight out of the forge kind of metal feel. That's what people say is best. That way it has just the right texture. It has enough you can grip it enough, but it also has enough softness to where you can let it slide through your fingers, which is a lot of what kettlebells is all about, is the transition movements and all that stuff. Now, something that you also may be noticing about me is, my hands. Basically, I was just born with some missing bones and shit. Nothing too interesting there, unfortunately. Just how I was born. Anyways, regardless, missing some shit in my hands. The reason why I point that out is because you guys are going to be seeing a lot of my hands, as well as the lower part of my floor, which is weird. But basically, I'm going to show you guys how I got what I think is a pretty close to what you want in terms of kettlebell stuff, and also things I learned along the way about how to get a polished kettlebell handle into a kettlebell handle that you actually want, which is this kind of mixture of like a little rough, but not too rough. Because if it's too rough, then it's just going to shred your hands. And if it's too soft, then it's just going to slip through your hands. Alrighty, definitely not ideal, but hiya. Also, man, I'm sweating. God, playing with dogs, just a whole exercise in itself. So one thing I want to quickly talk about is I got these kettlebells pretty cheap. Not the most cheap, but a good amount for what I wanted. Again, the only negatives that they have is that the handle is shittily polished, which is a thing that everybody knows. Don't polish a goddamn kettlebell handle, as well as they gloss the base. Now that's both of these things can be fixed with relative ease. Now, essentially all we're going to be doing is sanding the kettlebell handle with some sanding paper, but there is also more here. So when I first did this, I used my 35 because that's what I was going to use the most of, so I wanted to mess around with this one and get the handle perfect the way I wanted it first. So first of all, you'll see this in stuff. People will say sand the kettlebell handle. A lot of people talk about it in conjunction with putting chalk on the handle as well. I'm not doing that just yet. I just kind of want to get good at hand strength and all that stuff. So anyways, and yes, surprisingly, I can do every single movement, snatch, clean and press, swing with my hands being the way they are. Go team, don't give up, all that good stuff. Anyways, some things I learned when I did this kettlebell, the first one I did. Essentially, don't ever do this. Don't ever go left like this way with the kettlebell, because you're going to be making groove lines that are going to be going against the movements that you're doing kettlebell, which is a lot of the transition movements where you're jamming your hand into that. And holding it and gripping it like that. But if you have lines here, then that will cut into your hands in a bad way. So whenever you do whenever you start doing your sanding, go this way, left to right. Let's do it on this one so that I can actually do it. Left to right like this. Second thing, just advice that I picked up when watching a lot of the knife channels. They make knives, and I like watching it, regardless. It's whenever you take sanding paper, and this is good for if you want to use chalk or whatnot, but whenever you have sandpaper, cut it into strips, but first put a layer of duct tape on it, that way it doesn't break, because a lot of sanding paper, as soon as you go to do a corner, will just shred because you're doing a corner. So put tape, can be anything, duct tape probably best, but put it on there and it will last a hell of a long time until actually all of the, I'm not sure if you guys can see that, but basically a lot of the stuff is all broken off, but it's still usable. You know, it's like until this thing gets completely worn out, then you can stop. Whereas most things, as soon as you impact the paper below through the roughness, it'll just break. But if you have tape there, it'll basically last a long time, and also you will only have to use like one strip opposed to a bunch, just using this method of putting tape on the background, reinforcing it, allowing you to go ham on the handle. Good. Again, do not go left to right like this, because this will make plunge lines in the direction where your hand is not going to be moving, which is going to be cutting into your hand. So again, do left to right like this, go over top, do this. And make those grooves there. Now, the reason why that's not just good enough, because I tried doing that with just sandpaper, and I used a lot less rigid sandpaper, so softer sandpaper, to get myself a better finish. But then I just had a worse problem. Basically, it's kind of like a balancing act. You want something that is comfortable in your hand, but not going to slip out of it. Something not too soft. So I wouldn't advise going too fine of grit, so you want a gritty sandpaper. Something that will cut into it pretty deep. And then, the thing that I felt gave me the perfect kind of finish to where your hand can like transition and it feels properly, and it can both like grab onto the thing, but also make these transitions, is actually steel wool. So that is what we're going to be doing with this one, which is, again, the undone one. I haven't done too much hand stuff on the 51 besides swings and stuff like that, and I can just grip through it. So step one, get your sanding paper and just wet it. That's what I would typically do, wet it, and we're going to sand that all down, get in every crevice, and again, making sure the plunge lines are going left to right across the handle like this, rather than straight up like this. That way, again, because those plunge lines are in the same pattern or the same direction that we're going to be jabbing our hand through the handle. Perfect. And then, after we're done doing that, we're going to go wipe down the thing, because it's going to be wet, because I use water when I sand. And then we're going to put on a glove or a sock on our hand or something, and then just rub the shit out of this with the steel wool and apply great pressure so the steel wool cuts into it, and that gives me what I would determine to be the perfect amount of grip outside of like a straight up iron cast handle, which they didn't fuck with at all, and it's just like straight out of the forged steel hardened based stuff that has the right amount of grip, the right amount of non-grip. Yeah, but this is how you make lemons out of lemonade. And the second thing is how you get rid of a polished handle. Now, the reason why you don't want a polished handle is because when you go to cradle the kettlebell, I'm not sure if you guys can see it, it rests on your hand right here, and if it's polished, then it will like yank on your flesh backwards. It will almost like grip to your flesh and back. So you want kind of like a matte slash just neutral kind of texture on your arm, basically. And that one's pretty simple. Just get the same sanding paper. I have this one, a wood sanding paper, and you just sand off the polish off of it, and below that polish is paint, and that paint is relatively like a matte paint, which can easily glide past your forearm and not have any sort of like pullage and like horribleness there. Cool. Alright, so that's the description's done. I'm going to get after it and speed this up and show you guys me doing the kettlebell that is not the one that I did. So this is the one that I learned for. I also have a 44, because kilogram weirdness. And this 44, I did the same thing. This one I actually like did it perfectly. That one I kind of fucked up because I did plunge lines this way, and then I had to redo it. Anyways, you don't care about that. Let's do it. Ooh. Hi, ladies and gentlemen, me here in post and or in editing. So one thing I wanted to point out that I think could maybe be like a theory I have, that I'm not sure if it's perfect, but maybe. I thought maybe that if you messed with fire, like maybe a blowtorch and whatnot, and then you basically made it all sooty, and then you wiped off that soot, that may have the same type of steel grip kind of thing that you're after. So that could work. Also, maybe what's better than steel wool is actually a steel brush, although I'm not sure. Maybe you should do the steel brush first, and then that would add like grit to it, and then sand it, I mean. Although I don't know. Again, if there's anyone who really works with metal a lot and knows how to just restore basically a kettlebell handle to its kind of like original forge, like straight at the forge kind of thing, untouched, not polished, just neutral kind of steel, so it can slip to your hand, but also you can also grip it to some extent, so it's not too slippery, you know. But anyways, this is also what we're doing. We're just wetting the handle and sanding. I also throw a sock on my hand just because no one's got time to get a glove. Alright, so now it's no longer as polished, and now we're just going to hit it with that wool. Now, I don't have anything near me, so I'm just going to use a sock. Some sock, I put it through my hand just so the wool doesn't feel like it's grinding off my hand, because steel wool on your bare hand, no bueno, really not good. Yeah. And again, one thing I will say is the same thing with the sanding paper. Make your plunge lines like the same way your hand will be entering into the kettlebell, which is left to right if you're looking at the handle, straight forward. But anyways, yeah, just because, again, you want the plunge lines to go with this side that's going to be sliding to your hands, if that makes any sense. Anywho, ladies and gentlemen, again, if anyone has any sort of tips or tricks or any sort of better information, I'm all ears. Again, I'm going to whiz at this. I just made the best out of what I had. And I also, if there's anyone who wanted to also do that, this is where I started. Maybe you can take it further. I don't know. Anyways, back to me. All right. So, it's still a bit like there's some steel wool like bleed off, which I would just take something and wipe it down. But yes, this is no longer like so grippy that I can't actually get my, like I can't, like it stabs to my hand. Like when it's fully polished and your hand's like a tiny bit moist, it will like stick to it like glue. Whereas this still allows me to like slide in between, which is good. And yeah, also it just feels a lot better to grip onto, because there's like those plunge lines when you can't visually see them, but when you grip your flesh in there, they drive into those grooves, and that gives you extra grip. But again, if you still let go, you can still let your hand glide in between those with seamlessly. It's not like gonna catch. But also, if you happen to use like what do you call it, chalk, or just your like give it a couple weeks or a couple months of your hand just doing this a bunch, it will sand that down just by your callus rubbing on it. Or if you have chalk, those fine little tiny grains will help basically mold the handle to be more metallic. I think if you're impatient like me, or it just is super painful because it's polished in general, then you can just give it some time. Like this one looks way more rough because I've been using it for like 3 weeks straight now. So this one's super playful when it comes to gliding through your hands, but also it has enough grip to where you can like clamp down and feel your hands dig into it, which is nice. But yeah, that basically is what I did, and I would suggest you do is take some sandpaper, tape the back of it so that you can use it for a long time. And if you do use chalk, that's also a tip I'd give you, as well as to get steel wool. Try to get the rougher steel wool with bigger fibers, and then just go through it like this. And then that will give you, to me, what is an acceptable finish, what is an acceptable redemption to that. And if you want, you can't really see it on this one. Oh man, my back. This is not how you're supposed to pick it up kettlebells. Ugh. I think you can see it here. Yeah. So you see how it's really black right in the center here, but then it's lighter right here. That's not a lighting trick. That's because I sand off the polish of that right there. So when my hand goes to lay on the opposite variant, same thing on it's right here. My hand is not sitting on gloss, which grabs to my flesh. Instead, it's on this like paint, this matte paint, which doesn't feel bad on the back of your wrist. But yes, I'm sorry also. Today is a super hot day in summer, so you're seeing my hair and legs, unfortunately. But is what it is. Anywho, ladies and gentlemen, that is how you fix a polished grip. I'll point the camera back in my face. Also, it's a sweaty bit of business, that. quite, yeah, good old elbow grease and all that. But it absolutely restored it to what I think is best. But with that being said, though, I am open to hearing if anyone has also had this problem, and how they've went about solving it, of how to like reclaim the best kind of handle, which is like not too grippy but not too soft, because both are terrible in kettlebell. You want that like happy medium, but also you can just make it work with like getting good with like letting go of the weight as soon as it leaves you when you do a clean. And then a press and all that kind of stuff, and a snatch, same thing. You can get good at like these micro tiny movements that can help you reallocate your grip at the right time, to reallocate the pressure across your hands, so that you're not having to like transition like that. Oh, you guys can't see, but transition like that, and instead you basically fling the weight, grab it again, and then cradle it in its new position. Anyways, sorry, but hopefully this helped. Again, this was a video that I hoped existed and unfortunately didn't at the time, but now it does. Again, let me know in the comments down below if you have any sort of other fix for this. Like if maybe you used a different method, maybe you did take a torch to the handle and burn and get all that soot in there, and then wiped it down, and that gave you that metallic feel again. I don't know, but you just want that like nice, not too soft, not too hard kind of metallic finish. Again, you see a lot of kettlebell stuff, they either have like a matte handle, which is also not advised because eventually that paint will break, or they just have like a straight up steel, didn't fuck with it, just left it as is handle, which is what most people seem to like and want. Or you can just leave your kettlebell outside for 2 months and it gets a bunch of rust, and then you put a bunch of chalk on it, and that seems to do good too. Anyways, thank you so much for your time, ladies and gentlemen, and goodbye.